Welcome to Green and Red, scrappy politics for scrappy people. A regular podcast on radical environmental and anti-capitalist politics. Brought to you by Bob Bazanko and Scott Parkin.
Welcome to the silky smooth sounds of the Green and Red podcast. I'm your co-host, Scott Parkin, in Berkeley, California today, and Bob is off on assignment today. But I am excited to be joined by a longtime friend and comrade, Robby Diesu. Robby is a longtime organizer who worked with various social movements over the years. They currently live in Milan, Italy, with their husband, awaiting U.S. immigration approval of a K-1 visa. Their husband worked for Apple for 11 years until they were forced out for asking to receive the same benefits as heterosexual couples this past year. And so, Robby, welcome to the Green and Red podcast. Happy to have you here.
Hi, Scott. I'm glad to be here as well.
Yep. Why don't we just get right into it? You actually talk to us about what happened with Apple. This is all related to a move to the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. But let's just start with a little bit of the story. And
Yeah.
I also actually meant to say in the intro, this has actually also been recently written up by Robby in the Washington Blade, which we'll put in the show notes. But you'll get a whole story here. So Robby, why don't you start with tell us a little bit of what happened?
Yeah. So it's a very long and convoluted story. So I'm going to try to keep it as concise as possible. But in February of last year, my husband and I moved to, and I'm not going to use his name because of fear of retribution and sort of retaliation from Apple is a real and ongoing thing that we've been dealing with. But so about a year and a half ago at this point, my husband, who had actually worked in Dubai in the past, and is where we met, which is like a really weird coincidence we can maybe talk about as well when we talk about the sort of gay underground of UAE. But he has worked for Apple for 11 years. He was offered this promotion and transfer to help them open up a new store in Abu Dhabi, which is one of the other Emirates in the UAE. We had a very intense conversation of what that meant. We had been living in Italy before, waiting the K-1 process, and this opportunity came. My husband was very much committed to working for Apple and wanting to expand his career with them. And there is also the sort of underlying fear of moving to a country where our relationship would not be legally recognized and the implications of that. UAE is built on an expat economy. So 80% of the population are actually immigrants that are not from there, mostly South Asian and Filipino. But there is a fairly strong European, probably say that 10% of the population from Europe. So they made this offer to him. We had this very long conversation, and sort of the end of the conversation was like, we are not moving there if we are not going to receive the same benefits that heterosexual couples receive. That would include a visa and healthcare. Healthcare is obviously private there. So these are basic things that any job would offer any other couple. When we asked, we don't know. And then they came back and they're like, oh yeah, we can totally do this. This is great. We're like, look at us, look how great, look how progressive we are. We're Apple, we care. And then so we said,
and they offer those same benefits to like homosexual couples in the US, for example.
Yeah, they offer those benefits to homosexual couples. They offer it to unmarried heterosexual couples, which is an interesting sort of plot twist. Which is great that they don't deny healthcare to people who aren't fitting the legal definition of marriage for whatever reason, and the visa benefits. They're not something out of the ordinary for them to do, besides the fact that we are a gay couple. And so we pack up our stuff, moved to Milan. You could tell it was their first time dealing with it, and you expect bumps in the road. Any international move, having moved now moved intercontinentally 3 times in the past 2 years, I know that there's bumps in the road. And as soon as we got there, it became a little bit clear that they really had not thought through what this meant for them. When we were, as part of the relocation package, we were given essentially a real estate agent to help us find an apartment. and we signed a lease, or at least I thought we were signing a lease, and they had not added my name to the lease. And when we brought this to attention, he can just sneak into the building. That was seen as an acceptable answer to sneak into the apartment. That, mind you,
And that was Apple HR saying that.
Yeah, this is Apple and their contractors and such. So representatives of Apple in the country. And then all right, you know what? It's okay. It's figure it out. They resolved it. And the next sort of big thing was the healthcare. I was like, okay, so you got me a freelance visa. In order for this visa to be issued, you also had to prove that I had health insurance. Can I have my health insurance? This is still early 2022. The pandemic is still around. UAE still had mask mandates, and we had to get bi-weekly testing done, and all of the things that happened in the US in the early part of the pandemic continued in the UAE. And they're like, ooh, yeah, we'll get back to you. And that sort of started the real unraveling, I think, of that relationship, as it became clear that Apple had no intention to actually provide me the health insurance. Just assumed I would figure it out, or that we would figure it out on our own. This created a lot of tension for my husband at work, because he had to, it's never a comfortable conversation to go to your boss. It's even more uncomfortable conversation to go to your boss and ask for something that they told you that they would give you, and then they decide they're not going to give you any longer. And that sort of built off this contentious disagreement with the upper management, so regional managers, store leaders, and above, who I think targeted my husband as a problem person then for asking these basic things. He was eventually told that they would not be doing it, and that it was silly for him to think that they would provide him such a benefit. And this sort of kicks off the kind of language and gaslighting that Apple would use, and specifically flipping onto you, which is sort of built into their culture of work, the sort of we're a community. You got to pull up yourself into our community kind of thing. Yeah.
And saying that it was unrealistic or whatever to have the expectations you'd be providing those benefits, but those are benefits they provide to other people in other parts of the world.
Yeah. These are basic benefits that they provide to other people in other parts of the world. UAE is a specific space in which homosexuality is illegal. And that is often used as the cover for why they can't do it. But as a private company, Apple is able to do it. There are numerous other companies that provide benefits to same-sex couples, we believe. There are openly gay VPs of Bank of America, who the person who runs Middle East Bank of America is an openly gay man. So it's not
and
too
is
far
is in the UAE.
Yeah, in Dubai. So it's not that far out of the ordinary. And plus, I think particularly Apple is a company that prides itself literally on its inclusion and diversity as a cornerstone of their work.
That's the thing with Silicon Valley too, is that even though they're mega rich, it's based here in the Bay Area, which is one of the big liberal zip codes in the country. And they pride themselves on their corporate purpose, I actually believe is the buzzword they use. And it's where you see Black Lives Matter banners over Whole Foods, and they sell, I think you mentioned this in your article, they sell rainbow Apple Watch bands and things like that.
Yeah, and Apple is ran by Tim Cook, an openly gay man. Deirdre O'Brien is the former head of people, which is their HR department, and retail. She's now just the head of retail. She's an open lesbian. So they have gay leadership in as high as you possibly go. They have pride groups.
Top of the company.
Yeah, literally, can't get much higher than Tim Cook and Apple. And they have pride groups. They have pride groups at stores. They have pride groups at the corporate office. They openly march in the parade. They have given money to LGBT groups. They sell rainbow bracelets like this one every year when it comes around Pride. And they talk about it at work. They talk about diversity and inclusion as a cornerstone of the work that they do and building the culture of Apple and all that corporate speak. So it was always a bit shocking to be like, am I really having to fight for these very basic things? And not only fight, but be put down. My husband came home one night and said, I think I might have just been threatened by my manager for asking for these benefits, because he told me, you really need to sleep on asking for all these things and think about its implications. It's not a direct threat. It's not, I'm going to beat you up kind of threat. But that, to me, that is like a very clear form of intimidation to say, you need to stop what you're doing and really think about
I would call that
asking.
a veiled threat.
Yeah. But that's the culture, right? That is the culture of, you're either in it with us and we're doing all these great things and we're going to clap together every morning and go out into the store and sell some phones, or you're an outsider and you're penalized. That sort of was the continuous threat. So that was like the first 4 months where they kept going back and forth, which is another thing, this back and forth. They love the back and forth drama of, oh, we're going to do it. We're going to figure it out. Let's figure it out. Let's figure it out. Let's figure it out. And then this is by June, July, I'm like, I need to go to the doctor. Do I have healthcare? Do I not have healthcare? And eventually we just paid for it. It was about $4,500 for the year. So not too much money, but that's a sizable chunk of money. By June and July, after dragging it on for so many months, eventually my husband and I just paid the $4,000 for the health insurance, essentially forcing my husband to receive less compensation, less pay for being a gay couple, because they do pay full employee health care for married couples, for heterosexuals, and for unmarried heterosexual couples. Essentially, my husband was being penalized for being gay and being paid less for being gay. And that was in July. And part of it is that we made a commitment for 2 years, right? So a lot of people are like, why wouldn't you just leave at that point? And you couldn't just leave, right? Also hanging over this is that Apple paid for our move there. And so there's this constant, if you leave, you're going to have to pay us back. You're going to have to pay us back for the move, your flights, all the services you received. And we had made that commitment. We're honest people. We said we're going to do it. We knew we were stepping into something that is unknown and hard. It's not like we did not know about the policies of the UAE, so we paid it. Fast forward to February of this year. I should say January of this year. And about a month before my visa was set to be renewed, I got an email from Apple saying, hey, do you want to renew your visa? I was like, yeah, sure, of course. Just let me know what the next steps are. And then they went dead silent. I emailed them, I called them for 2 weeks, and nothing. So now it's 2 weeks before my visa is set to expire. It's also 2 weeks before our lease for our apartment has to be signed to be renewed. And we're sitting, waiting, calling. Sav just happens to have a one-on-one with the regional manager 2 days after I get this email that says, okay, here's the price list. And it's just Apple listing out how much it would cost for me to renew my visa. No explanation, no anything. And I asked directly, Apple pays for my visa as part of my husband working for this company. And directly, Apple will not be providing any benefits to you any longer.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, so just blunt, very clear, we are not doing this.
Did they give a reason?
No, they did not give a reason at that point. So this was in mid-February. My visa was going to expire in those 2 weeks. After those 2 weeks, I was able to leave the country for work, and I came back, and I was able to come back on a tourist visa. So I was able to come back as a tourist, which I could stay 9 days as a U.S. citizen. But what happened is that having the meeting with the regional manager 2 days later kicked off this sort of drag-a-thon of pointing fingers and who's responsible for who and who did what, in which Apple took no responsibility to what they were doing. My husband went through numerous HR professionals, numerous leadership people. He even emailed Tim Cook directly and said, hey, this is happening to me as a gay employee. I am trying to work for you and you all are refusing to do it. And instead of reaching back out, which is understanding your CEO, we were sent to another HR person outside the UAE as a neutral body. And this person was unable to say gay. He kept referring to us as people like you, in which if you read the article from The Blade, that's one of the things that I talk about is the demonization that comes with this, in which supposedly this pro LGBT company that supports diversity and inclusion literally has HR people who would refer to us as people like you. And they would start conversations of, so why do you think people like you deserve this benefit? Why do you think people like you were given this benefit in the past? Do you really think this is being homophobic if we're acting this way to people like you? And it was at that point, I think, that we realized like they were just running the clock, right?
Yeah.
So this happened over a 3-month period. So we were there until April 25th, which was literally the last day that I could legally be in the country. And they had still not given us a definitive answer of yes or no on the paying for the visa. At one point they told us, oh, why couldn't you just pay for it? We could have maybe reimbursed you. It's like a $4,000 visa. I'm not just coughing up cash.
Yeah.
And that inherently misses the point, right? Like, it's not about our ability to pay or not pay. It's the fact that these are benefits that you give everybody else, but you're civilly not giving it to us because we're a gay couple.
Yeah.
While you openly talk about how wonderful and great you are to your community of employees and the people of Apple and all this other crap, and particularly the gay community.
So do you think they were UAE, it's gay relationship, being gay is illegal basically in the UAE.
Yeah.
Do you think they were afraid of some sort of economic reprisal from the UAE as a company? Do you think they're like, oh, this is just too much of a hassle to deal with? I know it's all speculation, but I'm just curious.
It's 100% speculation, but I think it's a couple of things. I think my husband was targeted for speaking up, and they didn't like the fact that he spoke up and asked, as the organizers, in my opinion, very nicely, to be treated with the same dignity that they gave everyone else. And they were targeted as a problem person for that. The UAE is an apartheid state. It operates off of the desperation of people from the global south. And so workers there have no rights whatsoever. Your residency is tied to your job and your visa. So people don't complain, because if they complain, they get fired. They have 90 days to find a new job, or they get kicked out of the country. So I think that is a part of it. And Apple was not used to people in the UAE not being just super excited to have a job out of desperation and being like, hey, no, but you still need to treat me with dignity and respect and do all the things that you say in our code of ethics in our conversations together as employees. So I think that was one. I think the other is that the cover of gay sex being illegal in UAE was a very convenient one for them to not provide it. And I think thirdly, it is the hassle of actually doing the work.
Yeah.
They just didn't actually know how to do it for whatever reason, even though it's a very simple process to figure out. If you can't pay it directly, you can offer reimbursement, which is something we offered as like for the healthcare, because they kept saying, oh, there's just no way to do it. There's no way to put it into the system for him to get health insurance from us. When it's okay, if the issue is that the system isn't working, the insurance company's enrollment system, we can just apply for insurance and then you reimburse us. No. So I think those are the three things that they weren't used to workers in the UAE standing up for themselves. I think that the veil of homosexuality and gay sex being illegal is there. And the third is they just didn't want to do it.
Right.
To do it would have been too much of a hassle. And it would have opened a Pandora box, right? You see the union struggles they're going through it right now in the US and in France and in Japan and all the retail stores, where these people are told that, oh, you're so crucial to our development, you're so crucial to our company, but most of them can't afford to pay their rents. Most of them can't afford to eat. Each Apple worker produces about $2 million of revenue for the company, and yet they, on average, make $15 to $30 an hour or something like that. That's not the reality. And I think they're facing the sort of backlash of you talk about diversity and inclusion as a priority, and yet you guys can't even do the basic things. So you tell these people you're going to do these things, and then you don't do them. So
what has been so you've come back to Italy. What is your result? Is your husband still with Apple, or have they left now?
No, so we left on that very last day, then still with this understanding that not knowing if they were going to do it or not do it, but it became very clear. Literally, I had to leave the country. I was going to start paying a fine. And we got back to Italy, and they had offered him a new position after going through an interview process for about 40% pay cut. at a non-flagship store about like 45 minutes outside of Milan where we live. My husband speaks English very well. And so it was like very clear that this was just another sort of form of retaliation, that, yeah, you can keep working for us, but you don't get to work in the store where your ability to speak English would be really helpful in the city center. We're working with tourists, and had been told that you should be there years ago when you lived in Milan. And then on top of it, there's a 40% pay cut. Was a pretty clear indication that they didn't actually want to work with him anymore. And so at that point, we had a discussion. It was just not worth it. At one point, my husband was forced to give presentations on benefits and medical benefits, in particular for same-sex married couples and heterosexual non-married couples, while he was fighting for us to get those same benefits. That is such a disrespect and disregard for our dignity and our humanity, that once you just break that trust, you break that trust.
Yep.
And I think the trust was broken.
Can I ask a couple questions? I want to ask a couple questions about the UAE. You said that there's a large expat community. The economy is somewhat built on the expat community. And these are people coming from different parts of the world. I mean, I guess there's a good number of folks from Europe and the US who go there. And how does UAE respond to those folks who are like homosexual, who are, you know, either visiting or living in their country? It's a very repressive nation. You hear about it all the time. And how do they respond? Do they turn a blind eye, or?
Yeah, they turn a blind eye for the most part. Every once in a while, and if you do some Googling, you'll find there's I think it was in the mid-2000s, there was an incident where a British man touched another man in a public space, and he was eventually deported. There are obviously gay people that live there. There's gay Emiratis, of course. There are gay bars there. There is not an opening, flourishing community, but queer people exist, right?
Right.
I would say UAE has more of a don't ask, don't tell policy more than anything.
Okay.
Where as long as you're not fragrantly being openly gay, they're fine with it. I think my husband and I are pretty clearly a gay couple. I would wear rainbow flags on our bracelets. We would not hold hands necessarily walking down the street. Not that you walk down the street there, you live in malls, but I think it's a very clear indication when, you know, we're looking at apartments and we're like, what about a one bedroom? But there is still, I would say, a very deep understanding of don't talk about it publicly.
Right.
And I also think there's two different systems, right? So are three different systems, really, because there's a system for Emiratis who are under Sharia law, as with all other Muslims who live in the country, but there's a different expectation of what you are supposed to do as an Emirati, and the respect and the dignity you're supposed to receive from the folks who are living in the country, and how you're supposed to show up in spaces. So they still often wear a traditional dress and things of that nature. And then I think there's another class of folks who are white expats from Europe and the US, who are the managerial class who watch over things. And then there's an underclass of South Asians, particularly Indian, Pakistani, and Filipinos, who are the workers, who are there out of desperation to send them back to their families. And you'd be surprised at how many trans folks, you'd be surprised at how many, it was not abnormal to meet another gay person just going out and living life.
Yeah. I would assume within the Emiratis too that there's probably like an upper class. And and that there's a middle or definitely lower class too amongst that group as well.
Yeah, totally.
Who probably get two different treatments as well around these things.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely it's a clan system. The ruling class family was the ruling class family for a long time, and is still the ruling class family. But also Emiratis don't talk to you, which is like a really interesting thing to think about. Is I think I maybe had I can confidently say that I had one conversation, or there was one Emirati that I had continuous conversations with and interacted with, besides a like gentle hello in the elevator kind of situation. Emiratis very much stay to themselves. They very much are within their own sort of clique of life. Um, and that's fine, and that's great for them. And I don't really know where I'm going at this point, but I think it's important I think people think that you go there and you're like in depth in this sort of like Muslim culture sort of thing. And there is a call to prayer, and women wear niqab and hijab and stuff like that. But there is also a very clear distinction of this is the Muslim thing over here, and then there's everybody else is over here. And the people over here, you can do whatever you want. And there's no repercussions. Like, drinking alcohol is not a problem. And up until it has recently became legal for even Muslims to drink. But in the past, it was 5 lashes or something of that nature.
Right.
So,
right.
It's a very weird microcosm of what I think people would expect it to be. Where, like, I ate at more cheesecake factories than I have ever in the year that I lived there, my whole entire life. Like, I can tell you that PF Chang's, there's like a PF Chang's every 500 feet. It's not this weird foreign land. It felt very comfortable and very American to some extent. Just weird.
Yeah, but the corporate restaurant chains have long arms.
Yes.
Getting towards the end of our time here, but you have begun speaking out about this. Like we said at the beginning, you published an editorial or an article in the Washington Blade, and you're planning to do more. Is there anything that our audience can do to help you raise awareness about this story?
Yeah, so
and we can also put anything you want in the show notes too.
Yeah, so I wrote an editorial in the Washington Blade, which is the oldest LGBT newspaper in the United States. It's based in Washington, D.C. And at the end of that article, it's pretty clear there's nothing left for my husband and I with Apple. That ship has sailed. It's over. But I think the thing that I want people to get out of us speaking openly, and I should say me speaking openly about what is happening and what happened to us, is like the facade of support for our community, particularly now in the US when we're under a pretty vigilant attack from the right, is only so deep. Seeing what happened to Dylan Mulvaney, the trans influencer who was literally left out to the passengers by Bud Light after the right came after them, shows that corporations' dependency or corporations' respect for us end at the dollar. Apple is openly gay because it makes them more money. They don't actually care about their gay employees.
Right.
People should know that. And I think particularly the other gay employees for Apple should know that if something bad happens to you, don't expect Apple to be there to help you or do the right thing, because when they were asked to do the very basic right thing, they ran the other direction and left us out to dry.
Yep. I do want to thank you for speaking out. I know that this is one, a very personal story, and then two, like reprisal, like being gay in the UAE still has its risks. And then also speaking out against your former employer for a long time, or even your partner's former employer. I think it's very courageous. So I want to thank you for speaking out about it, Robby.
Yeah, and it's important. It's funny, we come from an activist community. Yeah. And I think one of the things that makes me weirdly happy about it is it's been really great to watch my husband realize his own power and his own ability to stand for himself. And this was a very chaotic and crisis moment where we literally didn't have a home for 3 months afterwards. It made us closer and stronger. And that's the power of organizing. It's the ability for you to realize that you're the one with a group of other people can really actually do it. And make the change.
Part of why we do it, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave it there. Folks, you've been listening to Robby Diesu, a longtime organizer who is speaking out about how the Apple has really
shit the can.
really done Robby and their partner wrong. And so you can find out more information about how to promote this or even support Robby and their husband in the show notes. And then also, if you like what you hear, and check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform, please give us a rate and review. It helps us with the algorithms. And then if you like what you're hearing, check us out at greenredpodcast.org and hit that support button, or become a patron at patreon.com/greenredpodcast. And we'll talk to you all again soon. Take care and misbehave. Coming